receive my emails.
I got it. Yeah.
Okay. I got it.
Yes.
I received one email personal this morning, but not something else. Did you have a general email?
I did. Okay, so let me just make a note of it to forward it to you, because Deborah, by the way, she has sent her apologies. I'm going to send it to you on it. Okay. I just want to explain to everyone that for me, my job has expanded, and so you'll see emails from my job mailbox or my personal mailbox, and then I just kind of remember everybody, and whatever email comes up, I just send it. And for us as a group, if I have left out anybody, just let me know. It's not purposely done, right? I'm just so busy. And I'm not just busy with my work, but like yesterday I was at my daughter's high school, which is my previous high school, giving a talk about unleashing the greatness in you. You know, so I do a lot of stuff during the day. So just let me know if I've left out anybody. It is not purposely done, but I am just juggling a whole lot of different things. So Henriette, I will send it to you. Did anybody else not receive the email? Because whatever email comes up automatically in my mail composition thing, I'll just send it out. Paul, yes? Paul, you're on mute.
Sorry, I was on mute. I'm having email trouble, so if anybody wants to reach me really urgently, you can text me or you can send an email to my work. It's omri.paul@ensco.com.
Omri.paul. Have that, okay.
Okay, thanks.
All right, so Howard, you're on. Hi, Dawn. Howard, you're on. So I'm gonna ask you to just, you know, whichever hands you see going up about questions, just officially acknowledge them, please. So as I said before, in my email, this is Peace and Conflict Resolution Month. And for me, it is so meaningful because the most enriching part of my Rotary life was dealing with juvenile delinquent persons in Spanish Town, you know, individuals who are 17 and below. And when you hear their stories of, it really comes back to not being loved. And so I would like for us to talk about what it is that we can do in our communities where peace and conflict resolution is concerned. The crime in Jamaica, and there was a video that I wanted to share with you guys. Howard, did you see that video that happened at one of our gym clubs in Kingston? Howard?
Yes, I did. I saw it.
Okay. So I did not want to share it with you guys because Jamaica is still a beautiful island, but Howard and I and Camille can so relate to this month because of what we're experiencing in the island right now. It is really very sad, but it is encouraging because our government is making moves to try and deal with it, curtail it, right? Serious moves. So I would like for us to really ponder about what it is as individuals that we can do. I know I contributed some years ago, even while I was pregnant, even before I became a Rotarian, I was going to this place and dropping off mattresses and sheet, you know, spreads and all sorts of different things. While I was pregnant, big pregnant, I had nothing to do with Rotary at that time. Meaning I was with Rotary because of my dad, but my contribution to this particular delinquency place had nothing to do with Rotary. So what it is that we can do in our own special way to show love to our youngsters, because guess what? That's where crime starts. That is where crime starts. And as Caribbean nations, you know, we have to really take that into consideration. So that's a part of our agenda. Also, I would like to talk about our DG visit, which by the way, you can mark your calendars, is March 17th. So we have some time to prepare, right?
March.
Yes, that's when he's free. You know, well, I told him, I offered that date because I knew that he would be free in March and he accepted. So let us just mark that in our calendars. I also have an update on our women's project. And I'm sure Paul has something to say about the butterfly story, but let us go back to peace and conflict resolution. I have no video, I have no agenda where that is concerned, but Roger, go ahead. And
Well, I mean, I don't know how many other people, but I read the Gleaner every morning online, and obviously that's been covering the problems and also the emergency declaration by your government. But I just wondered if Rotary in Jamaica, the AGs or anybody is collectively doing something, thinking about what they might do as a group rather than by club. I don't know. Listening to you made me, I hadn't thought about that question until I listened to you, but I don't know whether that's something that Rotary is in Jamaica particularly is thinking they might do collectively.
It's okay. So I agree with you, but my perspective, and that is just me as a regular citizen, right?
Yeah.
We need to deal with the youth because they are the ones who are coming up and they need to understand that. All right, so let me just be very raw with you guys. Can I be raw with you about what's happening in Jamaica?
You better be, because I don't understand what you're talking about, and this is why I had my hand up to.
Sorry, I can't see you on it, and that's why I asked Howard.
No, I mean, I would like to understand what's up because, sorry, local news from Jamaica don't come to Guadeloupe. You can imagine that.
Right.
The same as my local news from here will not come to you.
All right. So to answer Roger's first question about whether or not Rotarians are involved, the answer is no. In Jamaica, it is we can't get involved in the high level or rather the ground root situation with what is going on. Let me explain to you what's going on, and Howard, jump in when you can. Do you guys know what scammers are?
Scammers?
Yep.
What?
SCA. Internet scammers.
SCA?
All right, so you have these scammers, right? SCAMMERS. Okay. You have various scammers, but I'm talking about Jamaica scammers. You have some young guys, and if you can't understand my dialect in Jamaican, because I'm going to get very raw. You have some Jamaican guys, young guys, right, who trying to get some money quick. And what they do is they call people overseas. I don't know where they get these numbers from, and maybe Howard has some insight. And they offer them, you have won whatever amount of money, but however, you have to send X amount of money via Western Union in order to collect. And they target a certain niche, and it's mainly senior people. These people believe whatever it is that they're told, and they send the money via Western Union. All right, so that's phase one. And I've worked with Western Union. So I am in the financial institution for many years. So that's phase one. Phase two is the main scammers will send them boy. That's what them boy, to go to Western Union to pick up the money. So they tell the person to send it in this person's name. So that person goes to pick it up. That person picks up the money. And it can be a whole heap of money. You're talking about thousands of US dollars to pick up, quote unquote, 10 million, 15 million, 20 million US dollars that these senior citizens think they have won, right? So these boys go and pick up this money of $2,000, $3,000, $5,000. And then they disappear sometimes. So they don't go back to the main scammer with the money. So what happens is this main scammer said, how come this boy don't come back to me with this money? And so what they do is that they send out their lynchmen to find out where their families live and, what they do for a living. Not what they do for a living, but what their whereabouts are, what they do on a day-to-day basis. And then these lynchmen, they don't care. So they'll turn up at a gas station and they know that this guy's at the gas station and just shoot up the gas station. Right? In order to get this guy, because this guy needs to understand that and his family needs to understand that this 5,000 US dollars that was due to the main scammer really should not have, they shouldn't have dealt with it that way. right? So on a very basic level, that is what is happening in St. James. Howard, do you have any comments about that?
I mean, just to make sure that I have understood, you mean the scammers are fighting among themselves according to
Correct.
the various levels where they are?
Correct.
Because
So
one is taking the money instead of bringing it back to the big chief.
Absolutely.
But
Right.
they have taken the money from the old retired person who were dumb enough to think that they had won the big lottery. They have sent some money, and then the other guy is taking it back, but keeping it for himself instead of delivery.
The runners
Okay.
are ripping off the bosses. Look at it that
So
way.
it sounds like gang wars almost.
It is.
Yeah,
And that
but
really
there's a
what-
lot of collateral damage, if I understand, that they just go and shoot up whoever's there.
And that is the point, Dawn, right? There's a lot of collateral damage. And so these hitmen who come in for these scammers, they don't care, right? So they come into a gas station at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the morning and they start shoot. And so whoever it is that becomes a victim of that, they don't care. They're just on coke or whatever it is that they're on, and they're just shooting.
It's like the mafia. They want the whole.
That's the new mafia.
They not cross them.
Yeah.
It is what, Dawn? Sorry?
It's like the mafia was. They want to scare the whole community so nobody will turn them in, nobody will cross them.
Absolutely, right? And so that is, and I'm not seeing Howard on, sorry, I'm on my iPad, so I'm trying to see if I see Howard. But he is living in St. James, right? And because of my financial background, I know what is happening. I know the basics. But there's a whole web. So it's not, I'm telling you what the basics are, but there's a web. And so you have people who rent houses to these scammers. And then with these scammers, because them big and bad and them can murder people and get away with it, right? Them decide that they're not paying a rent to these people, right? And it's just a whole confusion. So it's a web. It's not just people owing people money and picking up money. It's just chaos. Right? And so the government, in my estimation, and Howard, please jump in when you can because you're in the situation. They need to come up with some other control systems where these people cannot rent houses. These people cannot go to Cambios and exchange money. They cannot pick up money from Western Union. I know that I used to work at Western Union for a long time, right? That service. I know that they have instituted policies to ensure that money laundering compliance things are in place and KYC, which means know your customer, etc., are in place. But it's not working. And so other things have to come into play. But it is so sad. You know, I heard a radio announcer saying, and I'm just talking Jamaica dialect, right? And she's a very popular, and Howard will know her. Her name is Miss Kitty. And Camille, hi Camille. And she said, imagine my man tell me, say, he might take me down to a hotel in a Mobile, right? And me have to tell him, say, me now go there so. Because of the state of emergency situation that's going on down there, so.
In English, what that means?
In
Did anybody
English?
under?
No, I didn't get a word.
I
In
told
English?
you this morning because it is something that is top of mind.
I understood it all.
Translation.
So the translation is, she said her boyfriend offered her a weekend in Montego Bay at a fancy resort, and she had to decline because she does not want to be stopped by police and soldiers on the way to the resort, right? Because it's going to be too stressful. And so she declined her of anything for that weekend. Go ahead, Howard.
Yes, well, it is dire, but I don't. Well, as the person living in Montego Bay, that is the tourism mecca of St. James. It is dire, and this is one of the reasons why we have a state of emergency. But that being said, our lives continue. I go to work every day. Camille goes to work every day. Business continues. It's a small percentage of the population that is causing the mayhem, and I don't want people far and wide to think that, you know, the entire parish is under lockdown and Jamaica is covered with soldiers and police from border to border, from east to west.
Right.
And I say that to say this, that is the impression that a lot of persons who have booked their vacation to Jamaica have of the country, when it's just a really, really small percentage that's terrorizing, because that's the effect of terror. You know, two persons go in and shoot up a mall and the entire state of Florida or some part in Zimbabwe is on lockdown and fear.
Yeah.
And as someone mentioned, it's like the neo mafia that has resurrected itself in parts of Jamaica. It has its roots in Nigeria because it's the email scamming, as Don had mentioned, is what started it. And so persons caught on very quickly. And now, as Leslie has said, they get persons' telephone numbers and try to convince them that they've won large sums of money. But in order to, you know, cash in on this winning, they need to send administrative fees, is what they call it, and these fees range anywhere between $200 to $2,000, and they target a particular age group. So the retirees and the persons who are invalid, you know, single person, that sort of thing. So it's really an abuse, and the government has for years tried without success to stem it, and because of you know, not being able to stem it now, it has become, as Leslie has said, this cycle of the hingemen and the dons and that sort of thing going after each other, and then there's collateral damage. But bringing it back to center in terms of St. James, it is the highest incidence of crime in St. James happens because of it. And because
Yep.
also we are the tourism mecca. This is why the government has set a state of limited emergency is what it's called. So I am free to go about my business. Every ordinary Jamaican citizen is free to go about their business. But one of the reasons why they've brought it in is because under a limited state of emergency, the police has more power of arrest. So, for example, regularly they would need to get a court order to do certain things. Under a state of emergency, they don't. They can readily go into a community that they know somebody is hiding and go get them then and there. So that is essentially what the state of emergency does. It gives them some more power to act in an emergency situation. So it doesn't mean that, you know, we're in an Afghan situation or a Gaza Israel border sort of environment. So that's it. Yes, Dennis.
Rest assured, this is a worldwide problem. I get at least 6 or 8 emails a day with that same Nigerian scam. Sometimes it's a South African scam. Sometimes it's a Jamaican scam. I get about 5, 6, 8 telephone calls a day that are hang-ups, that are phishing hang-ups, that I just don't answer the phone because I see what, you know, it reads out what the phone number is. And if I don't recognize the phone number, I don't pick up the phone.
Right.
I get them in the mail. You know, it is an epidemic worldwide, you know. And in fact, the AARP publishes a magazine every month. And their cover story this month was the 17 principal scams you have to look out for. And that was at the top of the list. So, you know, it's not a Jamaican problem. It's a worldwide problem. Your problem is a local problem with people who want to make easy money. And I don't know how you solve that problem. That problem is, you know,
It's everywhere.
Everywhere. It's like, you know, babies. You know, I mean,
yes.
Just,
well, Wayne wanted to say something. Unmute. Yes, go ahead, Wayne.
It's a worldwide problem, but it can be resolved, I think, only if the community is cooperating and pointing to those few scammers. So is there in Jamaica some type of a program now that the community will cooperate with the law enforcement to get these guys?
Knowledge and power is everything. The more people that know about it, the less people will be scammed by it. So.
Henriette, you had your hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to mention about the state of emergency, which, you probably know that France has had a state of emergency lasting for maybe 2 or 3 years, and now it became permanent because they have lifted the state of emergency, but they have put it in the constitution, which is, they put all the extra powers as a normal thing. That's our new president. So, I think that I join Dennis about this. This is a world situation. I mean, when you go to New York and you have to stay online before you get into a store, or you go to the opera and they search you to make sure that you're not bringing a bomb or something. I mean, it's still on, It's more or less. I mean, I'm going back to New York.
Life change. Life.
Life is, it's something that is. What I'm trying to say is not minimizing what's happening to Jamaica, because I think it's very important that if the tourism, which is the blossoming part of industry that would bring a better world for everybody in the island, if this is threatened, and it's a very bad thing because of a few people who are just fighting among themselves. But I would join those who said that it's a world situation that has to be addressed, even though it's in Jamaica and it has to be also addressed by Jamaican people. But how do we do that? It's the gang things are spreading everywhere, including in Guadeloupe, as you may imagine. It's sometimes they have it as a political stand, it's a rebellion against the government. It's the independence. They want to be independent, and so they rob everybody. I mean, it's the world has gone wild.
Absolutely.
And I think that this is the point we have to keep in mind through the example of Jamaica, which is being hit now, about what we can do, going back to what Leslie said, to help develop peace and understanding, in the world. Fini.
Wayne, just to answer your question, I think it was a question as to whether the communities are involved with assisting law enforcement. Culturally, that is not something we do, involve law enforcement. And I think the criminals take advantage of that. People are fearful. They are in terror, and the communities that are involved are usually, you find, characteristically, as Leslie would have mentioned, one of them, Spanish Town. You have low education, high crime, low earning power, and so these guys pretty much provide for members of the community at great cost to them, and as a result, very little information is passed on to the security forces, and the cycle continues. So we're really in a situation, and it is not new. It is, as you say, it's a worldwide problem, but history has a habit of repeating itself. And I remember, not that I was there at that time or even born, but I know the story of New York when it was really bad, with gang warfare and crime, and it's pretty much New York in Jamaica now. Maybe what we need to do
about that.
Okay, maybe what we need to do is find out what the U.S. government and the local councils, and what it is that they did to arrest the situation that is now repeating itself in Jamaica. Yes, Leslie.
Yeah, they did. The reality is, and you brought up the point in what you just said a while ago, unfortunately, the communities depend on these dons, especially the women, right? And when we reach the month of women and, maternity and stuff, we can talk about this. But when you listen, so what I'm saying is not a secret. When you listen to the news, right? The women are like the town criers. And so when the law enforcement comes into these towns, they're the ones who come out and they just tell everybody that police are come and soldier are come, right? And they hide things and they wash the blood out of their people, you know, their sons' clothes and their husbands' clothes or their man clothes. And it has to start. Unfortunately, this is just how our communities are run. So for example, I don't know how many of you know about Tivoli Gardens, right? And the main Don Dudus. This was years ago, 2011, 2012, how 2010, somewhere along there. And I have been in that community because my husband had to referee games in that community. So I've been there many times, and he has asked me, you know, I've been introduced to this Don and so forth. And that is just how it goes in Jamaican terms. And it was a very peaceful community at that time. Peaceful, and I put that in quotation.
Quote.
Meaning they abided to his law, whatever his law was. And a lot of communities are like that in Jamaica, unfortunately, because the government is not in a position to provide them with the social security services that are needed and so forth. That is just the reality. And so when our government implements things like a state of emergency, and I'm not saying it doesn't work, because in Tivoli Gardens it did work. It did work, but it was very unfortunate because a lot of innocent lives were lost, right? However, because that turned into a bloodshed because of Dudus and whatever was happening at that time. Unfortunately, our communities are dependent on these dons to provide them with education for their children, food in them fridge, right? You know, money to give them picnic to go to school. And that is just our reality, and that is just a fact. And until we are in a position, and as Howard indicated before, that is not the whole of Jamaica. That is just a part of Jamaica. That's a very minor part of Jamaica. Unfortunately, that's the part that is highlighted about Jamaica. But we have a whole heap of good that is going on, right? Our education is one of the best education systems, right? So there's a lot of good that's going on. However, the crime, because it is so topical, you know, that is what makes headlines, and it's unfortunate, but that is our reality. So until we get our communities to understand and our government to put into place certain benefits for our underprivileged communities, it's not going to change, because they depend on, that's why they're called dons, right? Those of us who know Godfather, what them call Godfather, not Don, right? That's what they call the Godfather, Don.
It is the same in Latin America.
Yes,
exactly.
Dennis, you were going to say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, this all sounds so familiar. You mentioned New York, Howard, and one of the reasons why I moved to the Virgin Islands from New York in the mid-'70s was that crime exploded in New York. And New York didn't recover for 15 years, you know. 15 years it took New York to recover, you know. And it was a terrible place, especially in the late 70s and early 80s. I was in Jamaica in Montego Bay in about 1975, 74. And there were areas in Montego Bay, they said, do not go, you know. Okay. And it was really familiar to me because there were areas in New York, and I was born in New York, that I wouldn't go. And so this is not a simple problem, but we as community leaders, Leslie, you're right, we can make a difference. The difference is communication and community. And once that comes together, is anything that we can do to facilitate that is peace and conflict resolution. Absolutely. From the ground up. So. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, Denison. And I can tell you that it has worked in other communities, because right now Tivoli Gardens is one of the most peaceful places that you can go to. And it was a war zone 4 or 5 years ago. War zone.
That was the crime boss, right? There was a local crime boss there. And
correct.
Yeah,
and
that was the home, I guess the breeding ground for the crime boss, Tivoli Garden.
Mm-hmm. But remember Jimmy Cliff in all of the early reggae songs, you know.
Okay.
It was about all that, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the
Yes,
crime, but it's,
Starboy, that movie that he did, Starboy
yes.
was about that.
But the thing is,
Yeah.
Dennis, is that it has evolved. Whereas New York recovered over 15 years, it's Jamaica hasn't recovered, and it keeps evolving, and it has reached a stage where I believe the government cannot contain. So it requires community. I know there's a lot of emphasis now on community intervention programs, social welfare. We have a serious lack of social workers in Jamaica.
We do.
You know, they're just that stretched. Coupled with that is our high debt to GDP ratio that affects our ability to grow the economy sufficiently. So there are a lot of things involved in Jamaica's experiment, because I think this is a case study for any person doing sociology and criminology. I don't think there
Change
is,
soon come.
yeah, there's no one solution. There's no one quick fix, and it will take a community to really effect some sort of change in what we're going through. The peace and conflict we have that in communities. We have our schools. It has exploded in our schools. You know, the schools are
Absolutely.
a microcosm of the larger society, and we now have to implement, what do they call, Leslie? Wardens? No, not wardens.
Not wardens.
What are they called again? I don't remember the title.
You mean to check them to see if
Yes.
they have weapons?
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
wardens, I guess.
we have designated persons in schools now who basically just go around to ensure that there's discipline. You know, the teachers can't handle them, the principals can't handle them. We have a designated
really bad.
individual. We've created an employment specifically related to controlling crime in schools. It's amazing. Yes, Danny.
It's so bad that yesterday I went and gave a talk to my former school, which is now my child's high school. And I was talking about unleashing greatness in yourself, right? And then when my daughter and I had lunch, which is a ritual of ours every week, and we talk about what happened during the week, and she said, I was like, you know, this was so much fun. I've been doing it because I'm a big sister. That's my title at Immaculate High School in Kingston. And I was thinking that, I wonder if I could be a teacher. I'd always throw these things out at her just to hear her opinion at 13 years old. She's like, Mom, you have no patience. You could not survive in this high school. And that was not the high school I know, because the discipline was so ingrained. Immaculate
And this is a Catholic high school, mind you.
Correct. It's a Catholic high school. And so for my child at 13 now to tell me, and I'm a past student about the prep and high school, Catholic high school, discipline, and I was a rebel, right? But discipline was just ingrained in our system. For her to tell me you could not manage because you have no patience, because she knows that I'm a disciplined person, it is really sad.
Yes, Dennis, you're saying?
Yeah, it comes down to community again, once again. I'll tell you now that I live in a community of 178 homeowners here. Pretty wealthy community, although we don't have mansions. And I am an ombudsman for the community. So if there are problems between neighbors, or if there's a problem between that one of the homeowners is, you know, parking, you know, his boat on somebody else's front lawn, you know, I'm the person that ultimately resolves the problem between the homeowners association and the individual. It's an interesting place to be, but where it comes all back to is community again, and knowing your neighbors, and education. What I found that most of the time, that if people knew what the rules were, you know, they would follow the rules, you know, and a lot of it has to do with people not understanding the rules, you know. And every community has to have rules, you know, and they have to ascribe to them.
Wayne?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. No, I'm sure this is happening in areas where there is high unemployment of the youth, where there is desperation. The drunks, those are the ones that use as carriers or as messengers, maybe. So it's the government. What is the government, along with the stockholders, the bush stewards, the ISAs that benefit greatly from tourism, and the role models also? You are gifted. You have so many gifted sports figures in Jamaica, so role models for the youth, the young people in sports, all the stockholders, the coffee growers, everybody. Are they involved with the government to tackle unemployment, the desperation of the youth? Because that might be the root, just policing and putting, a state of emergency. Only that, I don't think, will solve the problem. So what is being done? The root of the problem is maybe desperation, unemployment, and other things, and tourism being the mainstay of your economy. If there is crime and this and that, they won't come, then it will get worse, the unemployment and all the other evils that come with it. So what is the government doing together with the stockholders and everybody to solve this problem?
Well, I can speak a little to that, when having worked with the Butch Stewart group of companies, and maybe Camille also can speak to it. They have a lot of the corporate entities in Montego Bay have foundations that they try and reach the communities and assist, but it is very and I don't want to take away from their contribution because it's a lot, but it's really superficial, and the results are maybe longer term. We need short term to medium term solutions. So they have, for example, a foundation that or a cricket school, I think, for young persons to start, either cricket or tennis. I'm not sure which it is. So they engage the youth through sports, and there's what they call a sports ministry, to get persons involved in sports and seeing sports as a way out of your situation. There's the example of Usain Bolt and quite a few others who have taken themselves out of a less fortunate environment and made it on their own, or for themselves. But the real issue of creating jobs, they do that as well, but they have something called the hospitality training program, for example. And what it is that they take persons who are unemployed, carry them into the hotels. They get 6 weeks of training without pay. 6 weeks of training without pay, and they send them back out with a certificate. And this is more to help them with their costs than it is to help the persons that they're employing, because it's a way for them to minimize their payroll costs. And having worked in that system, I know exactly what they're doing. And this is replicated throughout the industry. So it's kind of hard, but it sounds as if corporate Jamaica benefits from this sort of economy, because you can take advantage of the persons who don't know better. On the other side of it, I know there are social interventions through the government. The Dean of Discipline is what they're called, Leslie. The Dean of Discipline is what they put in the school.
Okay.
Yes, so there are community involvement. There are persons who are working. I know Rotary in Kingston. They adopt schools and that sort of thing. So they look after the very basic needs. But in terms of medium to short term to medium term objectives, and I'm not sure we're very good at that, Wayne. So unfortunately, it is not that great of an improvement, I don't think. But Henriette, you had your hand up. Sorry.
Oh, that's all right. I just wanted to react to what Dennis said about the rules, and what you said was so interesting. I almost forgot. But everybody has to know that there are rules. The problem is that they very often choose to ignore that there are rules, or if there are rules, they think that the rules are for the others, not for them. Or that they can bypass them, or that they can stand above, or that they can, bribe someone and make the rules play for them, as you were describing about hiring people, making them work for 6 weeks without pay. That's not a nice thing to do, even though you present it as a training and a certificate that's worth nothing, because with a 6-week certificate, you're not going to find a job anywhere.
Exactly.
And, it's just, I think there is something really rotten in our society. I mean, not only in what we see, and what really makes me so bitter is that the biggest criminals are getting away free. They meet at Davos in Switzerland. They meet at the group of whatever. They pressure people. They close an industry and move somewhere else to make a few cents on the payroll of somebody else, and they shoot the economy completely down. And slowly, it's something that is really being destructive of all what we have known, and what we're moving on to with and the people who are fighting and who are the dons, as you said. There are those who think that they are the warriors and the survivors of what has been our society, and which is really going to be destroyed. And I would say the only thing is revolution.
But I'll like this.
Dawn, you had your hand up. Dawn had something to say.
I know what I used to run into. It was always a tipping point if we got to the place where I was trying to put the community services house in order and implement some rules. And when my staff could turn and say, Miss Dawn, the rules are just for us, nobody else is going to respect them, and they'll just abuse our stuff that we're trying to protect. And when I had to look at them and say, yeah, I know you're right, that's when things went downhill. And unfortunately, yeah, that happens often. And so how do you fix the layers of the problem? But you have to fix it, or it's just going to go nosediving.
Lou?
Yeah, you have to start thinking of trying to sell a win-win deal, something that people will buy into. And a lot of this, to me, seems people need to be re-educated on how to help each other. And, the fact that, yes, there are rules, and life is full of rules, and teach respect for those rules and support those who are trying to enforce the rules as well. Now, I think your government is spot on, but I'm kind of reluctant. I don't like to hear that the people aren't supporting the police. And you were suggesting that was maybe a cultural thing?
It is.
Yeah, well, that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Because in Canada, we have a tips line. Like, nobody wants to be a rat, face it, and you don't want to be called out or, But if they had some kind of anonymous tip system, that might help. That's just my suggestion.
Well, we do have that, Lou. And what I mean by cultural is that very word you mentioned. Nobody wants to be a rat. So nobody wants to be identified as a person having given the information. We do have helplines, but I'll go back because I know a little about the political history of Jamaica. When in the 70s, our system was designed to win votes. So the politicians at the time preyed on the inner city communities, and they would suppress their voter suppression and that sort of thing. And the police was involved in all of that. So you would tell a constable or a sergeant about a particular situation. That sergeant or constable was connected politically, and by virtue of you passing on the information to the police, you will be found out. So generationally, it has been passed on that the police are not the best way to provide information. And so it has blossomed in, for want of a better expression, it has now blossomed into this culture of I'll keep to myself, I'll see no evil, I'll hear no evil. And yeah, exactly. So it's something that we've created for ourselves, Lou, and it's a serious quagmire. I know there is a solution and there's a way. It takes willpower, because there are other places that have done it, and there are places that are crime free. But it's going to take a lot more than just throwing money into a situation or giving people a few jobs. Yes, Don.
I know one of the key problems, Lou, is, and we're dealing with this in Cincinnati, and we just nearly had riots last year over this problem, is that generationally for many years, the police have been the problem. They've either been, in some cases they were on the payroll of the bad guys, and so they were.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
The thing was they had the police on the payroll to
itself.
protect themselves. But then, so if you turned in, you didn't know if you were turning somebody into a police force that would come and protect you, or to someone got off who would tip them off that you'd snitched and help them.
The policeman has to be the only person.
Amaryllis, wait. The third problem is that the police have become, especially for minority communities, very abusive. Like in Cincinnati finally had riots in like the late 90s, early 2000s, because 21 unarmed black guys got shot by police who just assumed that they were reaching for a pistol and they wound up having nothing on them, no weapons. And it happens 24 times. People decide the police are a bigger threat to my life than the bad guys.
Yeah.
You're not going to trust the police and turn into them. There's a dichotomy now in the U.S. of people who make an idol of the police and people who think from
it's really unfortunate, because I see what you're saying and I understand, but with us it's all anonymous. I mean, you pick up the phone, they don't know who you're.
If the system is corrupt, it's not going to be anonymous. And when people have
even in the US,
when people found it out the hard way a couple of times, you can tell them it's anonymous all you want. They actually know better. But the very real it's not, and they're not good. Once you cross that tipping point, it's really hard to rebuild the trust, because you've got to somehow prove that you got all that crap out of the system, and it's not there yet. There was a police officer last year in 2 trials the jury hung because we can't convict a police officer, but the guy had broken a bunch of rules on video, shot a motorist because he assumed he was in danger of his life, and nobody would hold the system accountable. He's off scot-free. He's suing the city to get his old job back.
Oh my goodness.
Nobody's going to trust that. Don't ask him to trust that. That's what we have to fix here in Cincinnati in order to address the kind of things that are coming back. Because we've got heroin, you've got scammers, we've got heroin, and the whole thing is coming back. And if we don't fix our relations with the police and admit what the police have done wrong and figure out how to deal with the heroin side of it, we're going right back to where Jamaica is now.
Yeah.
And it's not a question of informing people, it's a question of fix your problem.
Yes. Thanks, Don. Amaryllis, you were going to add something? Well, in Latin America, talk about the Latin America experience that I presume is almost similar to Jamaica.
Well, in Latin America, as you know, there is production. There's a lot of raw material for the production of drugs that go around the world. But one of the main ways that they go around the world is to come through the Caribbean first, and then from there to the world. Because it's very easy to take a boat from Tortola to St. Thomas, for example. And that's just the way it is. So it is not in isolation, and really the world people that would really be of interest on giving another chance to our youth worldwide, because this is not a Jamaica problem. This is it's like a network. Like president was saying. And that network works within another network. It starts with pretty much with Latin America production, and we have to understand that there is a lot of money that goes that also goes to terrorism and things like that, that is supported by drugs. Just people don't know where their money goes. Mm-hmm. And this is why this is so strong. It's all really a big thing, and I think the only way to go around this, and we are not going to be able to save everyone, but the only way is the same way we already know. We need to start with giving kids the opportunity to learn to feel safe, to love and be loved, and for them to see a different way out of living. There's just, that's it. Otherwise, you're there. I mean, how many people are like what's this girl, Malala? How many of them? There are not too many that break it from their core. So we need to give it to most of them. But
and that's where we come in.
I think as Rotarians, what we can do in 70/20, one of the things we could do is really showcase those youngsters that have done extremely well by going against their fear, facing and providing a model from kid to kid, a peer model.
Or we could have a competition on who writes the best story.
Well, I mean, it's now 9:03, but just in closing, and I'm so grateful to all of you who have joined us this morning, because this is such a topical, so important topic, right, in our world, you know, in our individual communities, in our countries. But just to remind us all that we had an honorary member, Jerome Cohen, who was recognized by President Barack Obama for his leadership in these type of communities. He watched his best friends being gunned down. And so if we need him to come back as a guest speaker to remind us of the adversities that people go through, but yet they're still able to rise above, we can invite him back.
Remember, he actually won in Seoul the Peace Scholars, the Peace competition for the video, which was announced.
He's well accomplished. He's well accomplished in this area. And so we have those type of resources.
Yes, I would like to just to add something, is that, you know, what Amaryllis said, I mean, we're not in the Pollyanna world, you know, not anymore. I mean, everything, we have to be good and teach people to be good, and then it's going to be good, etc. I mean, I think that people, you don't seem to realize that the world is changing. I mean, I haven't said anything about what's happening in France. I mean, you know it also, but you can see what's happening in Italy. If you take a look at Europe, everywhere it's worse, etc. I mean, I think that just thinking that just because we're Rotarians, we're going to change the world just by telling people to be good. I think, you know, there is a level of illusion, delusion, self-delusion, which is... which should be addressed. I'm not saying that we should sit and wait for things to be fixed, but I think that there are other ways of trying to solve things. And maybe not everybody is for revolution.
Just hold on, guys.
Just a minute.
I know I haven't spoken all morning, but I totally agree with Henriette. I'm listening and I'm wondering, Roger said, what are the clubs doing as a whole, not as a part or separately? But I think we can't change the world. We can't change everything. But if we all get together for one purpose, meaning the Rotarians on, let's say, Jamaica, because this is endemic. We are experiencing it in the Virgin Islands. You guys maybe it's at a greater level in Jamaica. But I'm not sure if Jerome going out and speaking is it. We need somebody from the prison to come out and talk to these guys and say, listen, guys, I've been in there. I've done this. You know, this is reality here. You know, something different, something dramatic, something, you know. So I'm with Henriette on changing the way we do things, not necessarily, you know, oh, she did good, I did good. Look at where I am today. I think maybe something a little more dramatic is what we need for to reach these people that have gone so far. You know.
Thank you, Jackie. President Leslie.
All right, so just to end this meeting, I'd just like to add a little bit to what Jackie said and Amaryllis and Honorette. I just want to reinforce the importance of a Jerome. It's not just that he was acknowledged by President Barack Obama. He does a lot of work to get up, right? He does a lot of work, and there's a lot of potential. And I just don't want to underestimate his power, right? And
Of course
most of us
not.
follow his work. I follow his work. And even though it's little, and I just want us to understand, no matter how little it is that we give, like yesterday I went and spoke to our girls. And most people don't think our girls are involved in crime and violence, but guess what they are? I told you they're the town criers in these communities when police and soldiers come in, right? So the little that we can give in our community where peace and conflict resolution is concerned, we need to do our part because we don't know what difference that will make. So on that note, I'd like to hand over to Amaryllis, our AG, to just give the 4-way test to end the meeting. And by the way, sorry, because of that, I will send an email. For those of you who don't receive my email, please don't take it as an insult. I am very busy, right? And I just copy and paste and, so just let me know if you don't. I'm gonna send an email this week as a summary of what we met about today. So just let me know if you did not receive it, please. And those of you who see that the current email that I have is not, applicable, just let me know. I don't mean anything. Go ahead.
I can forward, if you send it to me, I can forward it to, because I've got a list of that I just put on an email that I forward.
To me, Dennis, just forward it to me. But go ahead, Amaryllis, please. Go ahead with the 4-way test.
But Limi, please, I don't want to speak after the president, but I just want to mention that we're not underestimating the value of Jerome, but I'm just saying maybe other dramatic measures can be used as well. Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Go ahead, Amaryllis. Thanks, Jackie.
Oh, fellow Rotarians, of the things we think, say, or do, is it the truth?
Is it the truth?
Is it fair to all concerned?
Is it fair to all concerned?
Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
And will it be
beneficial
to all
concerned?
It will be beneficial.
It will be fun.
It'll be fun.
And to Rotary around the world.
Thanks, guys, for well fought debate.
And don't wear socks.
That too.
All right, bye-bye.